Welcome to the Rowell Report. Today I'm looking at the spat between the European Union and citizens and organizations in Israel connected to the settler movement and some settler activity which the European Union did not approve of. So anyway, I wanted to dig down deep into this topic of where this activity or attitude has come from in the settlers and how we can understand this a bit better within the framework of international law. So the most important information I can provide to you right now is the reply of Gideon Sa'ar, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel, and he states, Israel has stood, stands, and will continue to stand for the rights of Jews to settle in the heart of our homeland. No other people in the world has such a documented and long-standing right to its land as the Jewish people have to the land of Israel. This is a moral and historical right that has also been recognized by the law of nations, and no actor can take it away from the Jewish people. The attempt to impose political views through sanctions is unacceptable and will not succeed. So the main point here is that in this understanding, the Jewish people have a moral and historical right. Historical meaning the Bible, meaning thousands of years ago they were living in this land. It was given to them, so to speak, from God to Abraham and his descendants. So they feel a moral and historical right. They're on a mission, so to speak, to retake the land that is theirs, and they are backed up by what they call the law of nations, and nothing should or can stand in their way. So this is the understanding, it seems, that we should take from this reply of Gideon Sa'ar to the European Union for the sanctions they imposed. So you can say, well, this is a very specific situation going on in the Holy Land. It really has nothing to do with the anywhere else, doesn't have anything to do with the United States. So I would disagree. Let me dig deep into this concept called manifest destiny. So manifest destiny was the westward expansion of the European settlers. You'll have here an image that tried to, it's actually placed in the U.S. Capitol about manifest destiny. The settlers taking the land that is given to them by God through providence. So anyway, this is a key concept to understand in this whole situation of the Jewish settlers. And you say, no, it has nothing to do with that. Let me continue on. I'll explain it a little better. And you can see the connection. So here's another website, history.com, Manifest Destiny. So here we have a short text which illuminates this concept a little bit more. First, the concept of manifest destiny was, well, it happened, and of course God blesses it because the arriving European settlers organized the land, they made it productive, etc. So now we're going to see another facet of this manifest destiny. Manifest destiny, coined sometime before 1820, is the idea that the United States is destined by God. Okay, so here we have God is involved. The guy upstairs, as some say. So God is the author of manifest destiny. God is pushing these settlers to move west, to take this land and make it fruitful. So this philosophy It's more like a religion, but this philosophy drove 19th century U.S. territorial expansion as views to justify the forced removal of Native Americans and other groups from their homes. So again, Manifest Destiny, the author of Manifest Destiny, or otherwise known as the big guy behind the settler movement to go from sea to shining sea, is the guy upstairs, the big guy. So, you can't argue with the big guy. So, a little more about this Manifest Destiny. The concept, so here is another text from muwekma.org. I'll leave all the links below. You can consult them if you like to read more about this topic. Manifest Destiny is a complex view of the world, and oversimplifying it can lead to an underestimation of its adverse significance in the treatment of the Native American tribes and the creation of the United States of today. That said, the concept is, in essence, a belief that the white people who came to the continent were superior to the natives. Okay, so where did the first original Jewish settlers arrive from into the Holy Land? They came from basically European countries. Many of them were citizens of Poland or Russia or other parts of Europe. And so they also came seeing the native tribes, meaning the Palestinians. They were superior to them, and that their mission was to occupy that land. It was assumed that since the settlers believed that they were more advanced and had a more sophisticated culture and way of life, again, this idea of superiority, but also that paints the kind of society in Israel rather well. They believe that they are advanced, more sophisticated to the Palestinians. The land and its original inhabitants would benefit from the conquest, and they would learn a better way of life from their new overlords. So basically, eventually the Palestinians would thank the Jewish settlers for having occupied their land and made it more productive, more fruitful, and bringing in a more sophisticated culture and way of life. So anyway, then we go to an early application of the Manifest Destiny in the United States, the Cherokee Nation. So the Cherokee Nation had made an agreement with the newly found United States. Shortly after the creation of the United States, the Cherokee Nation made an agreement with the United States in which the Cherokee Nation was inviolable. It was, basically untouchable. And this was their land, and the United States would respect the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation would respect the United States. Well, that all worked out really well until the U.S. Army showed up to push them off their land, and they tried to fight using legal means, which we would understand would be correct in the kind of a international law framework. So the Cherokee Nation did everything correctly. They went to the Supreme Court. They even won the case, but they were still pushed off their land in what was later called the March of Tears, where many of them died on their way west, being pushed along, force marched, a kind of a death march by the U.S. Army towards, I believe, Oklahoma, what is today known as Oklahoma, and put in what you would call a prisoner of war camp, otherwise known as a reservation. And so that is what happened to the Cherokee Nation. So again, the agreements and the legal structure that was in place could not withstand the push of the Manifest Destiny, which was the land belongs to the European settlers, and the people who are there are merely just historical accidents that need to be pushed off that land so that a superior culture can take place and can grow. So then we want to look a little deeper into manifest destiny, the religious origins. So here we have an article in nationalhumanitiescenter.org, The Religious Origins of Manifest Destiny, Donald M. Scott, Professor of History, Queens College and the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. In 1845, an unsigned article in a popular American journal, long-standing Jacksonian publication, the Democratic Review, issued an unmistakable call for American expansionism, focusing mainly on bringing the Republic of Texas into the Union, which at that time was technically a part of Mexico. It declared that expansion represented the fulfillment of our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence. Again, here we go, a mission from God for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions. Thus, a powerful American slogan was born. Manifest destiny became first and foremost a call and justification for an American form of imperialism, and neatly summarized the goals of the Mexican War. It claimed that America had a destiny, manifest, i.e. self-evident, from God. So this mission's coming from God. Who can challenge God? Who can question the decisions of God? So that's the whole point of the manifest destiny. God decided, you have to accept it. No questions, please. Just accept it and become a part of the great work of God. Manifest destiny was also clearly a racial doctrine of white supremacy that granted no Native American or non-white claims to any permanent possession of the lands on the North American continent and justified white American expropriation of Indian lands. So this came from God. This was a destiny. This was a mission. The settlers not only were allowed to take away the land, that this was their God-given right. So, but first the U.S. Army arrived and pushed most of the indigenous population into what I already mentioned, these POW camps. Today we call reservations, and then they basically started allotting chunks of this land that was taken away from the indigenous population to these settlers who were encouraged by bankers in these big cities to go out west and to occupy that land and to try to make it fruitful. So there you had the much of the farming community of the Midwest was born out of this movement of taking away land, splitting it up into little chunks, 400 acres or so, and then basically giving it to people who would come, and they would work the land. And if they worked the land for 7 years, or even were on the land for 7 years, it was theirs. And then they would start, creating this economy. They would be developing the local tax base and creating government, and that government would solidify the hold of these settlers on that land. So, and then you say, well, again, what does this have to do with the Holy Land? I mean, this is the United States. Manifest destiny was something very unique to the United States. Well, here we have one individual, Lieutenant William Francis Lynch, who went to the Holy Land in 1847 as part of a early Christian Zionist effort to build the support of restorationism, which is mentioned here in this article on israelnationalnews.com as a precursor to Christian Zionism. So this Navy officer for both the U.S. Navy and the Confederate Navy undertook this trip to the River Jordan and the Dead Sea, and then began to push this narrative that about the second coming. I don't know if you heard that from Pete Hegseth or not, that this is the reason why we're having the war in Iran. So all these things you say, they're just in history books, they're articles, they're, unimportant details. No, this is alive. This lives and breathes in thousands, maybe millions of American people. The Christian Zionism is deeply rooted in the manifest destiny idea that formed the United States, that they were a superior people, and they were on a God-given mission to take the land that was theirs. God gave it to them. They just had to go and make it fruitful, and God would bless them with progress. And so this fellow here, Lynch, who was a strong adherent of restorationism, a belief that the Jewish people must return to the Holy Land to fulfill their biblical prophecy of the second coming. The belief drove many Americans, including American presidents, to advocate for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. So here we have the manifest destiny taking root now in the Holy Land, and Christian Zionism became part of the political movement to relocate the Jewish people to the Middle East, to occupy land that was really theirs. It was given to them by God. It was their moral duty and obligation to take that land. And then you say, well, this is quite different from international law. International law teaches that with, territorial integrity and sovereignty and the rights of peoples and blah, blah, blah. Well, much scholarship has been dedicated to show that international law basically is just another form of colonialism, because you needed a set of laws for the European colonizers to be able to solidify and codify their expropriation of the lands of Africa. So they went to partition and colonize Africa, and the indigenous peoples who lived there, they had no rights. They had no rights to the land, no rights to the minerals. They were basically slave labor. They were there to be pushed to one side and to the other side, to be starved when they needed to be. We know about the rubber trade and how Belgium became rich because of the rubber trade and the mistreatment of the peoples where that activity took place. It was horrifying. But the European colonizers needed to codify and formalize this expropriation of this property, and international law basically was the justification and the codification of this theft of land, of natural resources. So then you say, well, how are you going to attack the Jewish settlers using international law if the international law is basically colonialism? It is imperialism. And so what they're claiming is that the Jewish settlers are taking the Palestinian land and taking it over and kicking the Palestinians off their land, and that is wrong. But the colonialism and imperialism which they codified in international law is okay. So basically, the conclusion of this video is that this whole effort by the European Union is a head scratcher, because they're trying to punish the Jewish settlers using a series of laws which were used to carry out colonialism and imperialism. So, in my point of view, they don't really have a justification within their own set of laws, because they themselves never observed any laws. They just used laws to codify, to basically justify the theft and expropriation of land, of resources, of dividing up Africa into different countries arbitrarily, and then setting up their own political systems, which then the indigenous people had to fall within and to put up with until they could push these European nations out of Africa. So basically, the second conclusion that you should take from this video is that international law basically isn't international law, what we understand international law to be. Some set of standards that we need to observe in order to, for China to live with India, and India to live with Pakistan, Pakistan to live with Afghanistan, and Afghanistan to live with Iran, Iran to live with, so there's all these countries with all these different traditions and cultures and territorial claims. So international law is supposed to sort that out. But really, what international law really does is it just perpetuates colonialism and imperialism. And consider where The Hague is, the court where they're going to try people who go against international law. The Hague is next to where the European Union is, right there in Belgium, where they directed the one of the worst colonial terror campaigns in Africa, to take the rubber out of Africa, and while they were starving and mutilating the population of those areas. So here we have European nations claiming a superior law, that they're going to apply the superior law. Everyone has to follow it. Everyone has to go within the parameters of that international law. And so basically international law is not international law. So what we need is a new structure. And China says they want to lead the planet into the brave new world of new set of laws where there's actually equality and respect. Well, good luck to them. It's not going to be an easy task. Certainly having the United Nations in the country that has only been at peace for about 16 years since its creation does not help things. We need to get the United Nations out of the United States and maybe into Africa, the countries that have received all this colonialism and experienced it and know they don't want it. Maybe the United Nations needs to go there, or to some other, maybe it needs to go to China. I don't know. If China is going to take the lead on building new laws and new structure, the United Nations would fit well within the parameters of being relocated to China. Being in the United States is, basically a non-starter. This will not get us anywhere. And this only leads to the deterioration of respect of international law and the deterioration of peace on the planet. So anyway, thank you for joining me today for this video. If you have some ideas to suggest about international law, colonialism, manifest destiny, and the whole Middle East conflict, please leave some thoughts below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please come back. I hope to have a new video sooner than you think, and we can continue the discussion on international law. I will be focusing on Ukraine in the next video, so look forward to that. And so again, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you back for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.